Her mother had given them to her. She realized 2 weeks after leaving that she had forgotten them on the bathroom counter. And because she believed her husband was nothing, because she was certain he was just a quiet, boring man with a modest paycheck and no ambition, she figured she could walk right back in, grab them, and leave again. She pulled up to the house on a Tuesday afternoon. Same house, same driveway, and same quiet street in East Atlanta. But something was different. There were cars, black SUVs, 6 of them, lined up along the curb and into the driveway like a wall of steel. Tinted windows, diplomatic plates. 2 men in dark suits stood at the front door with earpieces and straight faces. A motorcade. At her husband's house. She sat in the car with the engine running. Her hands gripped the steering wheel. Her mouth was open, but nothing came out. And then, the front door opened, and her husband stepped out. But he wasn't wearing his usual wrinkled khakis and old sneakers. He was wearing a tailored black suit with a kente cloth draped over one shoulder, gold cufflinks, a signet ring on his right hand she had never seen before. He walked toward the lead SUV, and a man in a suit opened the door for him. And another man bowed slightly as he passed. Her husband, the man she had called boring, broke, and beneath her, looked like a king, because he was one. If you're new here, this is Fate and Folktales, where every story carries a lesson, and fate never forgets. If you believe that betrayal always comes back around and the truth always rises, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let's begin. Because this one is going to make your jaw hit the floor. To understand how she ended up parked outside her own house watching her husband leave in a motorcade, you have to go back to the beginning, back to the lie she believed, and the truth she never bothered to look for. His name was Kofi Asante Mensah Boadu, but everyone just called him Kofi, and he was the kind of man you could sit next to on a bus and forget 5 minutes later. Average height, slim build, quiet face. He wore plain button-down shirts, usually blue or white, and khaki pants with brown shoes that were always clean but never new. He drove a gray Honda Civic that he had bought used 6 years ago. He kept the interior spotless, but never bothered to fix the small crack in the windshield. He worked as a data analyst for a logistics company in Midtown Atlanta. Cubicle near the window, brought his lunch in a brown bag every day, left at 5 on the dot, never stayed for happy hour, never talked about himself. His co-workers liked him. They just didn't notice him. And that was exactly how Kofi wanted it, because Kofi Asante Mensah Boadu was not a data analyst, but he was the youngest son of Nana Osei Mensah Boadu III, the paramount chief of one of the most powerful traditional kingdoms in Ghana. His family's wealth stretched back centuries: gold, land, cocoa plantations, mining rights, real estate across 3 continents. Kofi's personal trust alone was worth over $300 million. But Kofi hated what money did to people. He had watched his older brothers marry women who loved the palace more than the man inside it. He had watched friends change the moment they learned his family name. He had been hunted by people who saw him as a bank account with legs. So when he moved to America at 25, he made a decision. He would live simply, work a normal job, drive a normal car, and find someone who loved him. Not his name, not his title, not his fortune, just him. And for a while, he thought he had found her. Her name was Serwa. He met her at a coffee shop on Peachtree Street. She was sitting by the window reading a novel. Natural hair, bright smile. She laughed when he accidentally knocked over his coffee reaching for a napkin. He apologized 4 times. She told him once was enough. They started dating, slowly, quietly. He took her to simple restaurants, cooked for her at home, walked with her through Piedmont Park on Saturday mornings. Serwa liked him, at first, but Serwa had expectations. She had grown up watching her friends marry men with ambition, men who drove new cars and wore designer watches and took vacations to Dubai. She wanted that life. She believed she deserved it. And Kofi, quiet, modest, brown bag lunch Kofi, was not delivering it. When are you going to ask for a promotion?" she asked one evening, 6 months into their marriage. "I'm fine where I am," Kofi said. "Fine doesn't pay for a bigger house, Kofi." "We don't need a bigger house." "I need a bigger house. I need a man with vision, with drive. You come home every day at 5 o'clock and sit on that couch like the world owes you nothing." Kofi looked at her. His face didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted, a quiet note of sadness that she would never learn to read. "The world doesn't owe me anything, Serwa, and I don't owe the world a performance." She rolled her eyes and walked out of the room. That was the beginning of the end. But the knife that killed the marriage had a name. His name was Devante. Devante Palmer was Kofi's driver, not a personal driver. Kofi didn't live like that. Devante worked for a ride service that Kofi's company contracted for employee transportation. He drove a black Lincoln and had been assigned to Kofi for the past year. He was everything Kofi was not: tall, loud, flashy. He wore designer sunglasses even on cloudy days. He talked about money constantly, money he didn't have, plans he would never follow through on, investments that were really just screenshots of crypto apps on his phone. But he looked the part, he dressed the part, and he talked a game that made Serwa's eyes light up. It started small. Devante picked Kofi up from work every day. Sometimes he would come early and wait in the driveway. Serwa would bring him water, then coffee, then conversation. Then the conversation moved inside. Then the conversation moved to text messages at midnight. And then the texts became phone calls. Then the phone calls became lies. "I'm going to my sister's house." She was going to Devante's apartment. "I'm working late." She was in the passenger seat of the Lincoln, parked at an overlook off Pace's Ferry Road. "I'm tired, Kofi. Don't wait up." She was wide awake, just not with him. Kofi noticed. Of course he noticed. He noticed the way she smiled at her phone. He noticed the new perfume she wore on days she visited her sister. He noticed that Devante, his own driver, had started avoiding eye contact with him in the rearview mirror. But Kofi didn't confront her. He didn't yell. He didn't beg. He waited. Because Kofi understood something about betrayal that most people learn too late. You don't have to chase the truth. If you're patient enough, the truth walks right up to you and introduces itself. And it did. On their second wedding anniversary. The night everything fell apart started with silence. And silence in that house meant only one thing. Serwa had made a decision. Kofi came home from work at 5:15. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No television, no music, no cooking sounds from the kitchen. He set his bag on the counter and walked through the hallway. The bedroom closet was open, half empty. Her side, cleaned out, dresses gone, shoes gone. The small suitcase that usually sat on the top shelf, gone. He walked to the bathroom. Her toothbrush was gone. Her makeup bag was gone. The gold earrings with the emerald stones were still sitting on the counter. He picked them up, held them in his palm. They were warm from the bathroom light. And then he heard the front door open. Serwa walked in. She was wearing a dress he had never seen, tight, black, new. Her hair was freshly done. She was carrying her last bag, a designer handbag that Devante had bought her with money he'd borrowed from his cousin. She stopped when she saw Kofi standing in the hallway. "Where are you going?" he asked quietly. "I'm leaving." "Leaving where?" "Leaving you, Kofi." She said it like she was returning a library book. Flat, final, done. Kofi looked at her. His face was calm, but his hand tightened around the earrings in his palm. "Can I ask why?" Serwa laughed. Not a cruel laugh. Worse. A pitying laugh. The laugh of someone who thinks they are above you. "Because you're not enough. You've never been enough. I've been waiting for 2 years for you to become something, anything, and you just sit there, in your khakis, with your brown bag lunch, like a man who's already given up. And Devante is enough?" Her face flickered. surprise, then defiance. You know about Devante? I know about everything, Serwa. She straightened her back, lifted her chin. Good. Then I don't have to explain. He has plans. He has ambition. He's going places. He's going places in a leased Lincoln that my company pays for. At least he's moving. You're standing still. She walked past him. Close enough that her new perfume hit him. Close enough that he could have reached out and touched her arm. He didn't. She stopped at the front door, turned around. I left my earrings in the bathroom, my mother's earrings. I'll come back for them. When? When I feel like it. She opened the door. Devante was standing in the driveway, leaning against the Lincoln like he was posing for a magazine cover that would never exist. He saw Kofi in the doorway. He didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He smiled. A wide, winner's smile. Serwa walked to him. He put his arm around her waist. She looked back at the house, at the small, modest house with the gray Honda Civic in the garage and the quiet man in the doorway, and she shook her head like she was shaking off a bad dream. They got in the car and drove away. Kofi stood in the doorway for a long time. The earrings were still in his hand. The street was empty. The evening air was warm and thick with Georgia humidity. He closed the door, and then he made a phone call. What happened next would take exactly 6 months to unfold, and when it did, it would be the kind of thing that makes the whole city stop and stare. Kofi picked up his phone and called a number he hadn't dialed in 2 years. It rang once. Kofi! The voice was deep, warm, immediate. No surprise, as if the man on the other end had been waiting. Uncle Kwabena. Talk to me. She's gone. She left tonight, with the driver. A pause, then a slow exhale. Are you hurt? No. Are you sure? Kofi looked at the empty closet, the missing toothbrush, the earrings in his palm. I'm sure. I'm ready. Then it's time. It's time. Uncle Kwabena, formerly Nana Kwabena Mensa Boadu, Kofi's father's younger brother and the family's chief advisor, had been waiting for this call since the day Kofi moved to America. And he had disagreed with Kofi's decision to live anonymously. He respected it, but he disagreed. You are a prince, Kofi. You can live simply, but you cannot live invisibly forever. The family needs you. The foundation needs you. The people need you. Kofi had always said the same thing. Not yet. When I find someone who sees me, really sees me, then I'll come back to who I am. Now he knew. Serwa had never seen him. She had looked right through him for 2 years and seen nothing worth staying for. So there was nothing left to hide. Within 48 hours, things began to change. First, the Honda Civic disappeared from the garage. In its place sat a matte black Range Rover with diplomatic plates, delivered by 2 men in suits who called Kofi Your Highness and bowed before handing him the keys. A second, the modest house on the quiet street in East Atlanta began receiving visitors. Men in traditional kente cloth, women carrying documents. A team from the Mensa Boadu Family Foundation, a $2 billion philanthropic organization that operated schools, hospitals, and clean water programs across West Africa. Kofi was being installed as the foundation's new chairman for North American operations. Third, the phone calls started. CNN, Forbes, Bloomberg, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. A Ghanaian prince living anonymously in Atlanta for 8 years was a story. A Ghanaian prince whose personal trust was worth $300 million working as a data analyst in a cubicle was a headline. Kofi declined every interview. My story is not for entertainment, he told Uncle Kwabena. Then what is it for? It's for the people who need the foundation. Let's focus on the work. The foundation's North American launch was scheduled for 6 months after Serwa left. A gala at the Ritz-Carlton, Atlanta. 300 guests, ambassadors, business leaders, philanthropists, press from 4 continents. And in those 6 months, While Kofi was quietly becoming one of the most talked about names in Atlanta, Serwa was learning the truth about Devontae Palmer. Every lie has a shelf life, and Devontae's had been expired since the day Serwa got in his car. The first month was paradise. Devontae rented an apartment in Buckhead, a one-bedroom with a view of the skyline. He told Serwa he was starting a luxury transportation company. He had business cards printed. He bought a new suit. And he paid for everything with a credit card that was already maxed out. The second month, the cracks appeared. The rent was late. The business had no clients. The new suit was the only suit. Devontae started borrowing money from Serwa, small amounts at first, then larger ones. It's just until the investors come through, baby. There were no investors. The third month, the eviction notice came. Devontae blamed the landlord. He blamed the economy. He blamed everyone except himself. They moved to a smaller apartment in College Park. One room, no view. The Lincoln was repossessed. It had always been leased through the ride service contract. Devontae was driving a borrowed Nissan Altima with a cracked taillight. The fourth month, Serwa found the other woman. A text message on Devontae's phone, then a second number, then a third. And Devontae wasn't just broke. He was a professional liar. He had told 3 other women the same things he had told Serwa. The luxury company, the investors, the big plans. Serwa confronted him. He denied it. She showed him the texts. He shrugged. "You left your husband for me, sweetheart. What did you think this was?" That sentence, 8 words, landed like a slap. She stood in the kitchen of that tiny apartment and felt the floor tilt underneath her. Not because Devontae was cruel, because he was right. She had left a good man for a good liar. She had traded substance for smoke. And somewhere across the city, in a house she used to call boring, her husband was becoming a king. She didn't know yet, not the full picture, but she was about to. The 5th month, Serwa started seeing things. Small things at first. I saw a headline on her phone while scrolling through news. Ghanaian royal family launches $200 million foundation in Atlanta. She scrolled past it. A conversation at the hair salon. Girl, did you hear about that African prince living in East Atlanta? He was working a regular job this whole time. She tuned it out. A billboard on I-85 South. The Mensa Boadu Family Foundation logo, a golden shield with a cocoa tree, and underneath it, Building Futures, Honoring Heritage. She glanced at it and changed lanes. She never connected the dots, because she had never asked Kofi his full name. She had never asked about his family. She had never asked him anything that mattered. And then, the 6th month, the earrings. She woke up one morning in the College Park apartment. Devontae was gone. He had stopped coming home most nights. And the rent was 3 weeks late. The refrigerator was nearly empty. She was wearing the same dress she had worn to leave Kofi, and it didn't fit the same way anymore. She thought about her mother's earrings, gold with a small emerald stone, the only thing her mother had left her, still sitting on the bathroom counter in a house she had walked away from without looking back. She had to go get them. She borrowed Devontae's Nissan. He had left the keys on the kitchen counter, which meant he was using someone else's car. She didn't want to think about whose. She drove across the city, through College Park, through downtown, through the neighborhoods that got greener and quieter the closer she got to East Atlanta. She turned onto the street, and she stopped breathing. Black SUVs, 6 of them, tinted windows, diplomatic plates. 2 men in dark suits at the front door. A man in traditional kente cloth speaking into a phone on the porch. A woman carrying a leather portfolio walking toward the lead vehicle. A motorcade. At Kofi's house. Serwa's hands went numb on the steering wheel. Her vision narrowed. The blood drained from her face and pooled somewhere in her stomach where it sat like a stone. Then the front door opened, and Kofi walked out. But this was not the Kofi she knew. This was not the man in wrinkled khakis and brown shoes. This was not the man with the brown bag lunch and the cracked windshield. This man wore a tailored black suit that fit him like it had been sewn onto his body. A kente cloth, hand-woven, gold and deep green, was draped over his left shoulder. Gold cufflinks caught the afternoon sun. A signet ring, heavy, ancient, and engraved with a family crest she had never seen, sat on his right hand. He walked with a posture she had never witnessed. Straight, tall, shoulders back, chin level. Not arrogant, regal. The walk of a man who had been carrying a crown in his pocket and had finally put it on. A man in a suit opened the rear door of the lead SUV. Another man, older, in full kente, bowed slightly as Kofi approached. "Your Highness," the older man said, "the ambassador is waiting at the Ritz." "Thank you, Uncle Kwabena. Let's not keep him waiting." Kofi turned to get in the vehicle, and as he turned, for just a moment, his eyes swept the street. The quiet street he had lived on for 8 years. The street where he had parked his Honda Civic and carried groceries in paper bags and lived a life so small it was invisible. And his eyes passed over the borrowed Nissan Altima parked at the curb. He didn't see Serwa inside it. Or if he did, he didn't stop. The door closed. The motorcade pulled away. 6 black SUVs rolling down the quiet street in perfect formation. Silent, powerful, final. Serwa sat in the Nissan and watched until the last vehicle disappeared around the corner. Then she screamed. Not a word, not a name, just a sound, raw and broken and animal, that came from somewhere deeper than her throat. It came from the place where the truth lives when you've been running from it. The place that knows exactly what you lost, exactly when you lost it, and exactly why. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. Tears poured down her face. Her chest heaved. She couldn't breathe. Your Highness, the ambassador, the Ritz, had $300 million. Her husband, her quiet, boring, khaki-wearing, brown bag lunch husband was a prince, and she had left him for a man who couldn't pay rent. She sat in that car for 47 minutes. She didn't go inside for the earrings. She couldn't move. She couldn't think. She could only sit there and replay every conversation, every argument, every eye roll, every cruel word she had ever spoken to the man who had been hiding a kingdom behind his silence. "You're not enough." She had said that to a prince. "He has plans. He has ambition." She had said that about a man who was now borrowing her car to visit other women. "At least he's moving. You're standing still." She had said that to a man who had been standing still on purpose, because he was waiting to see if she would love him without the crown, and she failed the test. And now the crown was on, and she was sitting in a borrowed car with a cracked taillight and an empty refrigerator and a man who had already moved on to the next lie. She drove back to College Park. She walked into the apartment. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall, and she understood, for the first time in her life, that she had never been the one settling. He was. 2 weeks later, the gala happened. The Ritz-Carlton, Atlanta. Grand ballroom. 300 guests. Crystal chandeliers. A string quartet. Ice sculptures. A red carpet where limousines deposited ambassadors and executives and philanthropists in gowns and tuxedos. And at the center of it all, Kofi Asante Mensah Boadu, Prince of the Mensah Boadu royal family, Chairman of the Mensah Boadu Family Foundation, a North American division, $300 million trust, a man who had chosen to be invisible and was now choosing to be seen. He gave a speech that night, short, quiet, no notes. "I came to America to find out who I was without a title. I drove a Honda Civic. I packed a brown bag lunch. I lived in a house that most people drove past without noticing. And I learned something." He paused. The room was silent. "I learned that the people who love you when you have nothing are the only people who deserve to be there when you have everything." He looked out at the room, 300 faces looking back at him. This foundation exists because my family believes that wealth is not a trophy. It is a tool. And tonight, we put that tool to work. The room erupted. Standing ovation, camera flashes, and the moment made the front page of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution the next morning. Serwa saw the article on her phone. She was sitting in the College Park apartment, alone. Devante had left for good 3 days earlier, taken the Nissan and the last of her cash and driven to Florida with one of his other women. She stared at the photo. Kofi at the podium, the kente cloth over his shoulder, the signet ring catching the light, the quiet, steady face she had once called boring. She scrolled down, read the article, read the number, 300 million. She put the phone down. She picked it up again. She typed his name into the search bar. Kofi Asante Mensah Boadu. The results filled her screen. Forbes profile, Bloomberg feature, CNN interview request, Foundation website, family history stretching back 400 years, gold, a land, influence, power. She had slept next to this man for 2 years. She had told him he wasn't enough. She put the phone face down on the mattress and lay on her side and stared at the wall. There was nothing left to say. 3 months later. Kofi sat on the back porch of a new house, a property in Druid Hills that the family foundation used as its Atlanta headquarters. The house was large but warm. Traditional art on the walls, kente patterns woven into the furniture upholstery, a garden in the back with herbs and flowers. Uncle Kwabena sat across from him, 2 glasses of palm wine between them. She called again, Kwabena said. Kofi nodded. I know. 17 times this month. I know. What do you want to do? Kofi looked out at the garden. A hummingbird hovered near the flowers, and the evening light was golden and warm. Nothing, he said. There's nothing to do. She wants to come back. She doesn't want me, Uncle. She wants what she saw in the driveway. She wants the motorcade. She wants the title. She wants the number. He picked up his glass, took a slow sip. I spent 8 years looking for someone who would love the man in the khakis. She looked at that man every single day and decided he was worthless. He set the glass down. That's not something you come back from. Kwabena studied his nephew's face. There was no anger there, no bitterness, just clarity. You know, Kwabena said, your father said something to me once. He said, a crown doesn't make a king makes the crown, and the woman who cannot see the king without the crown will never deserve to wear one beside him. Kofi smiled. Small, quiet, real. My father was a wise man. He was, and so are you. They sat in silence. The hummingbird danced. The palm wine was sweet. The evening air was warm. And somewhere in a small apartment in College Park, a woman stared at a phone that never rang back, surrounded by the nothing she had chosen, haunted by the everything she had walked away from. She had wanted a man with ambition. She had married one. She just never learned the difference between a man who performs ambition and a man who embodies it quietly until it was far, far too late. Kofi Asante Mensah Boadu never called her back. Not because he was cruel, because he understood something she never did. Love is not a negotiation. It is not a transaction. Yeah, it is not something you walk away from when the packaging doesn't impress you and then walk back to when the price tag is revealed. Love is what you do when you think no one important is watching. And Serwa? She had been watched the entire time. Not by cameras, not by spies. By a man who was quietly asking one question every single day. Do you see me? She never did. And by the time she finally saw him, standing in that driveway in a tailored suit with a motorcade at his back, it was too late. Because the man she was finally seeing had already seen everything he needed to see in her. If you want to see who fate visits next, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because in these stories, the people who walk away from gold because it isn't shiny enough always end up chasing glitter. And glitter? Glitter fades. But gold?
Años exactamente, bueno, no exactamente, ¿no? Un grupo de soñadores en La Paz decidió fundar algo que trascendería generaciones. El glorioso Club Bolívar. No imaginaron que... Oye, me he esforzado al hacer el discurso. ¿Qué ponen ZZ, chat? Basta, me he esforzado, se los juro que me he esforzado, bro, basta. Por favor, me he esforzado en el discurso, respétenme un poquito, chat. Bueno, igual lo voy a leer, me la chupan, la verdad. Chat, nefastos. Son unos envidiosos, ¿saben? Son unos envidiosos. ¿En qué me quedé? No imaginaron que ese nombre se convertiría en un sinónimo de grandeza, lucha y de orgullo nacional. 101 años después, Bolívar no es solo un club, es un sentimiento que se hereda, que se sufre y se celebra. Últimamente sufrimos mucho por Robato, ¿no? Es el latido de miles de hinchas que en cada victoria y en cada caída nunca abandonan, ¿verdad? Nomás. Porque ser celeste no es una elección, es una forma de vivir. Muy bien, qué lindo, un aplauso. Bravo, bravo. Muchachos, tremendo discurso. Buenas noches, Edito, ¿cómo estás? Por lo menos ponte tu chompita, pues, un busito para leer el discurso. A ver, cállate, Gabo, ¿vos quieres ser baneado? Este discurso lo he hecho en mi cama, pensando en lo que es ser bolivarista, la verdad. Un aplauso, por favor, y con ayuda también del gran ChatGPT. Un aplauso para ChatGPT. Ah, ¿cuál era la finalización de un ratito? Dice, que estos 101 años sean solo el comienzo de muchas más llenos de alegría. Felicidades, Academia. Felicidades, Bolívar. ¡Bravo! Aplausos para ChatGPT, muchachos. Para vos no, dice. Buenas noches, muchachos, ¿cómo están? Gracias por estar aquí, perdón por prender tan tarde. La verdad estaba viendo mi serie, estaba viendo el regreso de Justin Bieber. Bueno, toda la tarde me vi fútbol, hasta vi el partido del Tigre. Vi el partido de River, vi el partido de Oriente. Las declaraciones de Martins, tremendo lo de Martins, bebé, le tiró palo a Villegas, pero bien tirado. Huevada, en su cama lo hizo todo pajeado pensando en el... No, ¿qué dice este Arielito? Oye, ¿quiénes vamos, no? Mi sobrino de quién redacta mejor. Dile eso a ChatGPT, yo no he redactado. ¿Qué me estás molestando a mí? Felicidades. Qué pasado. Pues la verdad nomás. ¿Qué quieren que les diga? A ver, ¿qué les puedo decir, muchachos? Yo no publiqué nada en mi página, la verdad no hice nada estos días. Han sido momentos difíciles. Bien triste, ¿no? Mentira. Pero no, muchachos, bueno. Quiero felicitar a todos los que son bolivaristas y hoy en día más que nunca, ¿no? Que es difícil ser bolivarista en el sentido de todo el contexto que estamos pasando con el técnico. Pero si lo ven por el otro lado también hay que sentirnos orgullosos porque hemos llegado a estos 101 años. Creo que como la institución mejor parada, tanto económicamente, futbolísticamente y dirigencialmente diría, pero no, creo que no, ahí nos falta, ¿no? Ese eslabón para poder ser una institución sólida. Y como ayer creo que lo decía Dardo Gómez en su publicación en el Cholet, que Dios mío, ¿de dónde cagan tanta plata, bebés? Más fuegos pirotécnicos que en el aniversario de La Paz, no mames. Tremendo, felicidades a los del Cholet y a ver si pasan pues algunos monies. No mentira. Que dijo que el dirigente tiene que estar siempre al lado del hincha. Y eso es mucha verdad. Y no es por darle palo a Claure, porque tendrá sus funciones, las cosas que tienen que hacer. Pero creo que por esa parte que estoy... Uy, ¿qué? No, todavía no va a arrancar la fiesta, Tucán, tranquilo. y por esa parte creo que está bien, ¿no? Está bien. Y bueno, se vienen unas futuras elecciones donde el principal candidato es Dardo Gómez a seguir manejando lo que es este club tan bonito que es Bolívar, ¿no? Por detrás, obviamente, yo creo que tiene que haber gente que lo asesore. Espera, ¿mi gatita se echó pipí? No, ya, más bien. Me ha asustado, chicos, la verdad, me ha asustado. Ya saben ustedes, rayada está mi gatito últimamente, ¿no? No, ¿qué dice este Edipox? Y bueno, muchachos, nos espera, creo, un futuro grandioso. Yo lo dije, creo que esta es una oportunidad ya con el estadio de una vez establecernos como un club de fútbol, pero serio, y fuera de ser autosostenible, que se proyecte a más, ¿me entiendes? No estancarnos en solo ser un club boliviano, sino ya empezar a soñar con, no sé, a ver, por ejemplo, la venta de butacas en el estadio, venta de marketing, merchandising, que se vaya ampliando más las sociedades, ¿me entienden? O sea, yo creo que si una cabeza maneja bien todo eso, creo que podemos despegar, ¿me entiendes? Y no estar ahí creando leyes de mierda con el gobierno, pidiendo perdón para que nos perdonen los impuestos, ¿no? Los gatos, ¿no? Entonces, creo que, o ser un club que está a punto de desaparecer, como Wilstermann, que desapareció de la liga, pero está a punto de desaparecer, pero absolutamente de todo el fútbol. O ser clubes que le están mangueando el auspicio a la UTV y chupándosela al presidente de la federación por subsistir. Entonces, creo que Bolívar es muy grande y tiene, creo que, trascender. Eso es lo que nos falta, trascender, dar ese pasito para trascender y lograr los objetivos que siempre hemos querido, ya sea una Copa Sudamericana o una Copa Libertadores, ¿no? Y siempre tiene que ir de la mano. Estos últimos años, creo que es la verdad, se han ido alejando a las generaciones bolivaristas, al hincha común, al hincha fanático, a todos los tipos de hinchas se han ido alejando del club, por justamente el mal trabajo que se ha ido realizando estos últimos años en Bolívar. ¿Qué decía Valdivia? Creo que dijo que dejó un club autosostenible, o sea, sí, no vamos a decir que no. Económicamente creo que se dejó un club autosostenible. A ver, Solís, no pidas Gartic, ya les he dicho qué cosa de Gartic, hoy día es aniversario del club, déjame hablar a ver de mi club, Solís. Igual en el grupo de WhatsApp, no Tucán, jugaremos Gartic, no quiero dibujar huevadas, déjame, no voy a jugar Gartic, ya les he dicho, si quieren dibujar, agarren un cuadernito y empiezan a dibujar sus huevadas, no me vengan a molestar a mí con su Gartic. Saludos Reyisita, ¿cómo estás? ¿Todo bien? Gartic, temática Bolívar, no, métanse su Gartic por el poto, ya les he dicho. Y bueno muchachos, ¿en qué estaba? Es que me niego, muchachos, cada vez Gartic, basta, no quiero jugar Gartic, vayan a jugar Gartic con sus minas. Goklingo, huevadas hablas, ya, espera, ¿qué habla este Ignacio Loza, este Auri? Y bueno muchachos, creo que sí, yo me quedo con eso. Este martes tenemos un partido muy importante en lo económico, para mí muy importante para ver qué está el club de cara a este año, porque creo que es indispensable ganarle a ese equipo. En Copa Libertadores, obviamente por los 3 puntos y más, pero pensando a futuro, creo que es muy importante que se vea buen fútbol, ¿no? Y que la gente ya esté un poquito más tranquila con el funcionamiento del equipo. Ayer contra Bebé, bueno, el día sábado contra Bebé, se jugó un buen partido, no digo que un malo partido, creo que empezaron a aparecer personas, o bueno, jugadores que no estaban apareciendo, como es el Papu Velázquez y muchos más, ¿no? Entonces, interesante. Y bueno, apareció Cauterucho, que en el partido de Libertadores no había aparecido ni de sombra. Parece que Cauterucho solo le mete goles a equipos como ABB. Y preocupa un poquito eso, ¿no? Hoy ganó el Tigre, está puntero con nosotros. Nacional Potosí también está compartiendo la punta con nosotros y muchos más que vienen bien entonándose en lo que es este torneo, ¿no? Que empezó retardísimo y creo que nos va a pesar no solo a nosotros, sino a los demás equipos que están participando en copas internacionales, ya sea Blooming el caso, ¿no? Y otros más. Mete gol equipo chicos como Dorniro, pero Dorni ni jugó. ¿Qué dicen chicos? ¿Qué dicen? La era Robato es la peor de todos los tiempos, bebé, tomando en cuenta el centenario que es una vez en la vida. Sí, es la peor. De los últimos 10 años, ¿se podría decir que lo de Robato es lo peor que nos pudo pasar? A ver, piensen. Es que con lo que me dice el técnico de... A ver, ustedes pónganse a pensar, si tu técnico te dice que el objetivo era solo clasificar a Libertadores y que no estaba obligado a ser campeón, puta, ahí me la bajó mal, amigos, sinceramente, me la bajó mal. Podía aceptarle todas sus huevadas y todo, pero cuando dijo eso, es como que hizo sentir me hizo sentir un club más del montón, ¿me entiendes? Un Nacional Potosí, una Aurora, no sé, otros equipos bien X. Así me hizo sentir, la verdad. Por eso yo vuelvo a repetir, yo voy a hablar de lo que veo en la cancha, y este martes, si es que Bolívar gana, se va a aplaudir, y si es que Bolívar pierde, bueno, también se va a criticar algunas cosas, y si han fallado en algunas cosas, igual vamos a criticarlas, vamos a observarlas y vamos a dar nuestro criterio. Pero fuera de eso, Robato no puede venir a achicar el club, ¿me entiendes? O sea, creo que hemos tenido el parámetro y la vara de estos últimos años, bueno, desde que yo nací, desde que voy a la cancha, creo que el parámetro ha sido que Bolívar siempre salga campeón, ¿no? Bueno, un ratito vamos a banear al Gaby.